Hello there. Welcome to Papa Nick's Music. I'm your host, Papa Nick Lewis. And today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. Those of you who are rented lips. Those of you who are already subscribers know that this is the forum where I release the recordings of songs that I've written, that I've performed, and that's pretty much all I've posted here. But in a brazen attempt to try to pump up my viewer numbers, I've decided to branch out and talk a little bit about pop culture. Mostly music. I mean, it's right there in the name, Papa Nick's Music, for crying out loud. But I'm not going to limit myself to music. I want to do primarily things like album ranking videos, artist spotlights, the search for the perfect album. But I'm not limiting myself to that. If I decide I want to have a conversation about why the Marvel Cinematic Universe is so much better than DC, then I'm going to talk about that. If I want to explain why I think British stand-up comedy is so much better than American stand-up comedy, I will have a talk about that. You know, the floodgates are open. I can talk about anything here. But mostly we're going to talk about music. And today we're kicking it off with the Beach Boys. Oh, I love the Beach Boys. Beach Boys are one of these cultural touchstones. It's woven into the fabric of the American identity, just like Elvis Presley and John Wayne, right? I mean, it's there. If you are an American of a certain age or older, you know the Beach Boys. It's part of your DNA, just about. You know Surfin' USA and Surfer Girl and Fun, 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 and Help Me Rhonda, and Little Deuce Coupe. I mean, these things, they're part of our DNA. That being said, not everybody is a huge fan of the Beach Boys. A lot of people dismiss the Beach Boys as fluff. 409 and Little Deuce Coupe and Surfer Girl and that kind of stuff. But there is a lot of depth there. There's a lot of musical richness there. I'm a huge fan of the Beach Boys because primarily I'm a big fan of vocal harmonies, and there are no contenders for the preeminent vocal harmony band of the latter half of the 20th century in my book. Nobody does multi-part harmonies the way the Beach Boys do. I'm a fan of beautiful, intricate melodies. I mean, you can listen to virtually any of their songs, and if you just listen to the music, you don't pay attention to the words, just listen to the music, that it's a beautiful piece of music. In fact, one of the albums that the Beach Boys released, we're not going to be talking about today, they released in 1968. It's called Stack O' Tracks. And Stack O' Tracks is just a collection of Beach Boys songs with the vocals removed, stripped out, and it's just the backing instrumentals. And it's gorgeous. It's a wonderful record. It's one of my favorite records. And it, to me, is testament to the fact that, when you think about the preeminent American composers of the 20th century, first half of the century is going to belong to George Gershwin, but the back half of the century is going to belong to Brian Wilson. It's just amazing what he was able to accomplish. So I'm a huge fan of the Beach Boys. I own all of their albums. Slight hesitation there. There's one I don't have. We'll talk about that in a second. And that is a buttload of albums. I mean, these guys they recorded their first album, they released their first album in October of 62. They released their last album in, I want to say June? Yeah, June of 2012. That's 50 years of recording, for crying out loud. 29 albums, as few as 26 or 27, depending on how you count them. As many as you would want to count. I mean, if you start adding in things like the compilations and Endless Summer and stuff like, and box sets and stuff like that, it's a stack of material that, if I wanted to, I wouldn't be able to get to in a YouTube video. I might be willing to give it a try because I just love listening to myself talk, but I'm trying to remain cognizant of the fact that not everybody is as in love with my voice as I am. So we're not going to talk about all the albums. I'm going to rank the bottom 5 These are the ones to stay away from if you're thinking about dipping your toe in the ocean of joy that is the Beach Boys discography. Do not, I repeat, do not start with these 5 records. And then we're going to talk about the top 10. Everything that's in between, you can just assume. If I don't mention it today, then it's a good album. It's professionally done. If you listen to it, you might enjoy it. It might not light all of your it might not punch all of your buttons, but it's going to be good enough. It's not going to change your life, but it's not going to make you want to put your head through the wall either. It's just a good, professional, competent, decently done pop album. Before I get into my ranking, we need to do the subjectivity notice. And yes, I have this scripted. All aesthetic appreciation is subjective. As a result, no one person is objectively right or wrong in their artistic preferences. There is no such thing as objectively, verifiably, provably good music. The only difference between the critic or the connoisseur and the average schmo is the critic or connoisseur has a level of education or experience that gives them a vocabulary they can use to explain fine distinctions. The ability to explain a fine distinction does not mean that that fine distinction is better or more important than anything that you think, assuming that you're a schmo. I will like things you dislike, and you will like things that I dislike, and that's okay. If you want to tell me you disagree with me in the comments, feel free. I'm happy to have that conversation. If you want to tell me I'm wrong, I will happily point out the rope that you can go piss up. If you like it, that's good enough. There's no such thing as a guilty pleasure, and anyone who labels what you like as a guilty pleasure is using classist bullshit to belittle you in order to make themselves feel superior. We don't support that nonsense here at Papa Nick's Music. Now, before we get to the rankings, let's talk about the ground rules. I'm only ranking albums, and when I say albums, I'm not talking about EPs. I don't have a hard and fast rule here, but it's got to be, I got to think it's got to be at least 30 minutes long. And so we're not going to count anything that's only got like 4 or 5 songs on it, unless those 4 or 5 songs are each like 10 minutes long. It has to be an original recording. I don't want to do compilations. I don't want to do greatest hits, nothing like that. I don't want to do repackaged, reformatted, reimagined, remastered, reanalyzed, re-envisioned, and none of that stuff, unless the resulting reimagination is substantially different from the original. We're just going to talk about the original albums. We're only doing studio albums. We're not going to include live albums in here. And then finally, and this one's tricky to talk about. I want it, in my mind, the album has to have as its primary purpose being a collection of songs listened to in one chunk. The primary purpose of this thing is to be a collection of songs. And this is the criterion I use that I use to take out things like soundtracks. A soundtrack, Christmas albums. No, that's nobody. No, that's not what those albums are for. Soundtracks live in their own world. Christmas albums live in their own world. We're not including that kind of stuff here. So we're just talking about original substantial studio recordings that are intended for their primary existence to be a collection of songs for entertainment value. Management reserves the right to modify any and all of these as he goddamn well pleases, since this is his channel. So, with that in mind, let's talk about the albums. Okay, so I got my bottom 5. Now, when I'm thinking of these albums, I'm ranking the albums. I'm slapping numbers on them. Don't worry about that. But I'm not really thinking in terms of fine gradation for the most part. I'm thinking in terms of tiers. We've got good albums, we've got okay albums, and we've got mediocre bad albums. If we're lucky, we've got really excellent albums, and if we're unlucky, we've got, oh my God, hold your nose, this is a piece of shit, it's going to drive you screaming into the night, right? So, and these first 5 albums that I'm starting with are mediocre. None of them are so bad that they're going to make you question your sense of reality, but none of them are good, and none of them are albums that I would recommend. They're just not. We're going to start in the worst album. I don't think this is going to be a controversial choice. I think most Beach Boys fans will agree with me when I say that the worst album that the Beach Boys have ever recorded is 1992's Summer in Paradise. Of all of the albums that we're going to talk about today, this is the one that I do not have a copy of. When it was first released in the early 90s, 92, he said, reminding himself by looking at his note. When this was first released, I saw it in the record store. And at the time, I thought, oh man, I'd like to get this album because, I mean, it's the Beach Boys. This is what I do. But I did not have enough cash on me to buy this album. And I was in something of financial strait at the time. And so I had to wait until I had enough extra money that I could actually justify buying an album. And by the time that I had done that, I'd gotten, okay, so I got, the $20 set aside, I can go buy this thing. It was no longer available. And I have never seen it since. I have listened to it. You can find it on YouTube. And I'm here to tell you it is not good. I'm glad I didn't plunk down my money for it. The part of me that is a collector of Beach Boys product wishes I had picked up a copy just so that my collection would be complete. But yeah, after listening to it, no. Now, I will say, if your reaction to the Beach Boys, if somebody says, ooh, what do you think about the Beach Boys? And your first reaction is, well, I really like Kokomo. I am not slagging off on Kokomo here. Kokomo is a lovely little song. But if that is your thing, okay, that's the song, that's the Beach Boys that I like, then you might like Summer in Paradise. Summer in Paradise is very Kokomo-esque. Kokomo is not on Summer in Paradise, but it's recorded from the same perspective, with the same viewpoint. A lot of the songs sound like Kokomo sounds. It's just, oof, it's a rough slog compared to the rest of the albums on this list. I would not, under any circumstances, recommend that you purchase a copy of Summer in Paradise. Coming in at number 2 in my bottom 5. Okay, this one is going to be controversial because there are a lot of people who will place this at the top of the list. There are a lot of people who will tell you that this may be, in fact, the best Beach Boy album ever. These people are, I'm sure, well-meaning, but they should be kept away from sharp implements because this is borderline insanity. And my second worst Beach Boys album is 1977's The Beach Boys Love You. Oof. This is an album that when I was in college, I had a friend, Richard. Richard, if you're out there, how you doing? Richard and I were both Beach Boys fans, and we would listen to Beach Boys, and some of it we would just be transfixed, and the beauty of it was just, amazing. And we talk about the interesting chord progressions and the what they do in the bridges and which voice is which in the harmonies and all this sort of stuff, and we loved dissecting the songs. And then some of these we'd put on and just laugh our asses off because they were so stupid. Beach Boys Love You was a laugh our asses off kind of album. It is the album that I think is the most cringe-worthy. The music is not particularly varied or original. The instrumentation, it sounds like Brian got a couple of nifty keyboards and he just sat in his bathroom and plunked out an album. It's just, there's nothing I can recommend about The Beach Boys Love You. Sorry, all you diehard fans. Coming in at number 3, this comes from 1967, and it is Smiley Smile. The problem with Smiley Smile is not so much that it is a turd of an album on its own. It suffers in comparison because it is the thing that the Beach Boys released after teasing everybody with the promise of Smile. After the Beach Boys, for those of you who are not, dipped by your heels into the river Styx of fandom of the Beach Boys, after the triumph that was Pet Sounds, Brian Wilson started working on his next project, which was going to be Smile. And it was going to be wonderful and revolutionary and fantastic, and ooh, everybody's going to love it. And as he got close to the finish line, a combination of mental illness and substance abuse issues conspired, and he ended up ditching the whole project. And the band was able to cobble together this, I'm not even sure what to call it, this, we'll be charitable, we'll call it an album. And they called it Smiley Smile because all of the I assume, because all of the press anticipating the release of Smile, the folks knew that that was going to be the next album, and they didn't want people to think that it was that. But at the same time, we've already invested in this concept of Smile, so we'll call it Smiley Smile. And the only good reason for buying a copy of Smiley Smile is that this is the album that has Good Vibrations and Heroes and Villains on it, both of which are songs that you may well want to own in your music collection. And if that is the case, go ahead and buy one of the compilations that has those two songs on it, and you will be better off. Coming in at number 4, the album that is quite possibly the most disappointing on the list for me personally is 1976, 15 Big Ones. 15 Big Ones. Brian had left the touring group several years before, stayed holed up in his house managing the recording process for their albums. And then in the early 70s, he even backed away from that, and the different other members of the group, notably Carl, stepped up and started taking on more of the shouldering more of the burden when it came to actually producing the albums. But in the mid 70s, Brian had plateaued. His issues had plateaued, and he was wanting to, let's be a team. I want to work with the guys again. And so there was a big, Brian is back, the news said. We're all excited. Or the Beach Boys are going to do a new album, and Brian is actually going to be part of it. And out came 15 Big Ones. Yeah. 15 Big Ones is not a good record. It's not a bad record. None of these are bad records in the sense of, like I said, you're not going to put your head through the wall. You're not going to, they're not complete turds when it comes to their qualities as records. They're just not good, particularly when you compare them to the rest of the stuff. I mean, if 15 Big Ones was the only release of some band you'd never heard of, you would think to yourself, well, they were an okay band, for a cover band, and they might have been okay, but if this were a debut album of a band, there is nothing about 15 Big Ones that would make you then turn around and buy the next album. The only people who have any warmth in their heart for 15 Big Ones at all have that warmth because they are Beach Boys fans, and they know that this is part of a chain of albums, and as such, it carries extra weight and extra emotional resonance. Most of the album is covers. The songs that aren't covers are not particularly good. It's not a good one. Coming in at number 5. Okay, this is also a really disappointing one because my favorite Beach Boy is Carl Wilson. As much as I respect Brian's accomplishments as a composer, Carl is the reason why I'm a Beach Boys fan. I love Carl's voice. I love Carl's composing skills. He's a wonderful songwriter. Can't write lyrics worth shit. And has shit taste in lyricists that he works with for the most part. But his melodies are good. His tunes are good. He's an excellent musician. And as I said, a beautiful vocalist, wonderful vocalist. I would argue he and Sam Cooke are the two preeminent vocalists of the latter half of the 20th century. It's just, I love I love Carl Wilson. Keeping the Summer Alive is a Carl Heavy album. And he has written a couple of the songs on it, the title track and one other one, name escapes me off the top of my head. He co-wrote these with another of my heroes, Randy Bachman from Bachman Turner Overdrive. I love Randy Bachman. And I'm thinking, I've got Carl and I've got Randy Bachman together. Oh my God, this is going to be great. Nah, not so much. Now, Keeping the Summer Alive is pretty much the highlight of the album. It's hands down the best song on the album. And it's an okay song. It's not great. It's just kind of there. Nothing about it stands out as being really good. Nothing about it stands out as being really bad. It's just, it's taking up space. It's taking up oxygen. It's taking up room on your shelf. You could have a better album there. So, yeah. So these are my bottom five. I've got a dishonorable mention here, an album that almost cracked my bottom five. The problem is I'm not sure I should be counting it as an album, so I went ahead and kept it out. And that is 1989's Still Cruisin'. Problem with Still Cruisin' is that it's, in order to pad out, in order to make it the length of an actual album, they've included old hits, old songs, and the conceit that holds the album together is that these, for the most part, are songs that have been featured in movies. And this is the album that has Kokomo on it. Kokomo came from Cocktail. And so it's got a couple other, a song that was in Good Morning Vietnam, a song that they did for Troop Beverly Hills, and a bunch of the, so about half the songs are songs from movies, and most of those are old Beach Boys hits. So already it's like, is it a compilation? Is it a soundtrack? And when you look at the actual number of original songs, now we're also thinking it might be an EP. So it's like, okay, 3 strikes, you're out, pal. But it's a booger nugget. It is not a good album. There is actually one song on the album that is worthwhile. I've got the album on CD and have it's not available streaming. You can't. I haven't been able to find it streaming anywhere. Probably could find it on YouTube. To be honest, I haven't looked too hard for it. It's not a readily available album, and it's not one that I would go out of my way to find. It has only one song on it that makes it worth. There's only one song that makes it a CD that I'm never going to trade in, and that's Somewhere in Japan, Somewhere Near Japan, excuse me, which I think is a lovely song. The rest of it is, oh man, flush it quick and light a match. So that's my bottom 5. Now let's talk about the top 10. Before I get into this, I want to say I heartily recommend all of these albums. If you want to experience the joy that is the Beach Boys, if you want to start on this journey of Beach Boys discovery, you cannot go wrong with any of these albums. These are all winners. They're all heartily recommended. Coming in at number 10. Okay, I've got an issue with number 10 here. My issue is this. I really wanted to include one of the early albums. The problem I have, I love the early albums. When I say the early albums, I'm talking about the first 7 albums that they released. Starting with Surfin' Safari from 1962 and going up through All Summer Long in 1964. So in the space of 2 years, they released 7 albums. And they're all wonderful albums. The problem that I have is that it's hard for me to tell them apart. The sound is similar. It progresses as it goes. Surfin' Safari and All Summer Long, if you listen to them back to back, they sound different. But they all have the same qualities. They're all just chock full of really good pop tunes. The musicianship is good. The vocals are good. The writing is decent. I mean, they're all good albums. Most of them have at least one bit of filler, but they're all good, and it's really hard for me to separate them. And I mean this literally. Which album has "The Warmth of the Sun" on it? Off the top of my head, I don't know. I have to look it up every time because the albums, they blend together to me. So I can't really pick one out as being this is the good album of the bunch. They're all good, and they all might as well be just one honkin' big album from my perspective. So in 10th place, I have a log jam of Surfin' Safari, Surfin' USA, Surfer Girl, Little Deuce Coupe, Shut Down Volume 2, and All Summer Long. Can't go wrong with any of these, but like I said, to me they all blend together. Heartily recommend any, just grab one, and that is where the Beach Boys start, and it's wonderful. Coming in at number 9. Okay, from 9 on, we've got actual making actual decisions here. My 9th best Beach Boys album, I would argue, is 1969's 2020. 2020 is a great album. It's a little on the disjointed side because it's not a cohesive album. It doesn't have a single producer that's working on the whole thing. It's this album, this cut is produced by this, and this one is this, and this one is this, and it's got wonderful songs on it, but it when you listen to it, it sounds like a compilation album. In a way, it kind of was. It has wonderful songs. "Do It Again" is the lead-off track, and is a very good song. It's after having a few years of albums that were musically adventurous in terms of what the Beach Boys had been doing. "Do It Again" was right back to basics. It's got "I Can Hear Music," which is the Carl's debut as a producer, and it's a beautiful song. It has "Time to Get Alone" and "I Went to Sleep," which are both wonderful songs. It's got "Cabin Essence" from the old Smile sessions. It's just it's a really good album, and I really like it. Number 9, 2020. Number 8. There's a soft spot in my heart for number 8. Ask me on any given day, it might actually be higher than number 8. Today, it's number 8. And that is 1972's Carl and the Passions, "So Tough." Carl and the Passions, "So Tough" is, let me double check this before I commit to it. Yes. Carl and the Passions, "So Tough" is the first album that features Ricky Fataar and Blondie Chaplin. Ricky Fataar and Blondie Chaplin were members of a South African group that Carl befriended. Carl produced, The Flame was the name of the group. Carl befriended them. He produced an album for them, and when it became clear that that the Beach Boys needed to pump up their touring band, Dennis had an accident of some sort, and I'm fuzzy on the detail of that, obviously, and was not able to drum for a while. So they recruited Ricky Fataar and Blondie Chaplin. Ricky played drums and sang. Blondie played guitar and sang. They were both wonderful musicians. Ricky Fataar later went on to be one of the Ruddles. And one of these days, we're going to have a discussion about Neil Innes and the Ruddles. And Carl and the Passions, "So Tough" is a good album. It's good, just a bare bones, straight ahead rocker kind of album. It's got "You Need a Mess of Help to Stand Alone," which is it it shows that Carl was every bit as much a rocker as he was a crooner. Marcella, same thing. Good straight ahead rockers. It also has a couple of Dennis's better songs. Cuddle Up is a wonderful song. And this album features what is quite possibly my favorite Beach Boys song, and may even be my favorite song of all time, and that is All This Is That, which is just a joyous experience. It's transportational every time I listen to it. Wonderful song, wonderful album. Love Carl and the Passions. So Tough. Coming in at number 7. Yes, I've got my notes down here. Number 7 is 1968's Friends. Friends is a great album. It has some very good songs on it. The title track, Friends, is wonderful. Wake the World is good. Busy Doing Nothing is just a beautiful little song that is... Brian had a few of these songs in this time frame, late 60s through early 70s, where he's just, okay, this is what I'm doing today. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to have a cup of coffee. Ooh, I'm having a cup of coffee. Right? He just writes these songs that are just, here I am sitting in the chair and this is what I see. And Busy Doing Nothing is one of those. And it's just, it's a nifty little song. Musically, it's very wonderful. Lyrically, there's nothing to it, but musically, it's wonderful. If we could somehow nip Transcendental Meditation off the end of it, it would be a fantastic album. Coming in at number 6, we have Beach Boys Today from 1965. Beach Boys Today is arguably the spot where the Beach Boys decided that they were going to be this is the point where they stopped being teeny boppers and started being serious musicians and serious writers and dealing with serious stuff. Beach Boys Today, the first side is very much, this is what we've been. The second side is very much, this is what we're going to be. It has, the first side has wonderful stuff. Good to My Baby, Do You Want to Dance? Help Me Rhonda, the album version, which I prefer to the single version myself. I'm one of those. Dance, 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 which is just a wonderful little song. But the second side has Please Let Me Wonder, and Kiss Me Baby, and She Knows Me Too Well. Oh, these are just wonderful songs. They're complex musically. They have a bit more poignancy in the lyrics. It's just Beach Boys Today is a wonderful song, wonderful album. If you can nip off Bull Session with Big Daddy at the end, that's the old holdover of it's still the early '60s, mid '60s by this point. And so we've got to have at least one song on here that that is just taking up space. But Beach Boys Today, great. Love Beach Boys Today. Number 5 is 1967's Wild Honey. Wild Honey is, I was talking about Carl and Passions being bare bones, right? Wild Honey, bare bones. Wild Honey sounds like it was, okay, it's like it's the members of the Beach Boys saying, okay, we've been doing this stuff, we've had the Wrecking Crew in, and we've been doing these wonderfully complicated recordings of these intricately arranged and orchestrated songs. Let's just do a song, let's just do an album with us just playing and singing, and let's bring it down to a basic level, which, as far as I can tell, is kind of what they did. Wild Honey is it stands, if you just listen to the discography, right? If you just start and you listen, and you can see it starts out simple and then starts getting more complex, and then it's just like complexity for the sake of complexity when you get to things like Smiley Smile. And then Wild Honey comes out, and it's just like, whoo, breath of fresh air. And then we go back to being to being complex and complicated. Um, Wild Honey, the title track is great. I Was Made to Love Her is great. Um, their version of the Stevie Wonder song. Darlin' is great. Here Comes the Night is great. Aces. Love Wild Honey. Wild Honey is great. Now, when it comes to these last four, my top four here, or the first four, I guess I should think of them as. Um, it is a common feature of album ranking videos where the person doing the ranking says, well, you know, when it comes to these, on any given day, any one of these could be number one. And I don't know that I would go that far. I'm pretty sure no matter what the day is, these four are going to shake out in this order. Um, I have a clear favorite of the four, and I have a, you know, I mean, most days, 1, 2, 3, 4 are going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. But the distance between them is very slight. I think they are all four wonderful albums. They are all four very strongly recommended, not just strongly recommended. And I have great respect for all four of these albums. Number four, 1971's Surf's Up. Surf's Up is, it has a richness that most of their albums don't have. There are very few songs that are throwaways. And I don't mean throwaway as a negative statement. On Wild Honey, I would argue that a song like I'd Love Just Once to See You is a throwaway, but I think it's a great song. I don't mean throwaway as a negative. It's just they're songs that don't have the complexity or depth that all of the other songs have. And Surf's Up, for the most part, is all complexity and depth. It has the title song, Surf's Up, is one of Brian's best songs. I couldn't tell you what the words mean, but it's a great, just sonically, it's a great song. It also has two of Carl's best songs in terms of his songwriting in Long Promised Road and Field Flows that are both just gorgeous. There are a couple of songs that are Day in the Life of a Tree is, oh my God, painful to listen to for me. It is definitely a skipper. I listened to it the first time I heard the album, and then I've listened to it maybe 2 or 3 times since, thinking, well, okay, maybe I was too harsh, but no, I wasn't too harsh. It's a stink burger. It's just, oh, it drags down side 2 of the album. The album also starts with Don't Go Near the Water, which is, no offense to Al Jardine. Al, if you're watching this, first off, oh my God, Al, you're watching this. But Al Jardine he's a wonderful guy. He's a very good musician. He's a very good singer. He comes from that folk tradition where he likes songs that have a message to them. And sometimes the message becomes more overt than it should be. And Don't Go Near the Water is one of those. I like the message. I'm sympathetic to the message, but it's a little bit like being beaten about the face and shoulders with the message. It's a little heavy-handed. But overall, the album is wonderful. It has also the distinction of having the one Bruce Johnston song that I can listen to without wanting to fling myself off the nearest tall building. Not a big Bruce Johnston fan. Bruce, if you're watching, I apologize, but I'm not a big fan of your work. But Disney Girls is a fantastic song. It's a wonderful song. So Surf's Up, good solid album, number 4, and it is number 4 with It's got a lock on number 4. Wild Honey is never going to, on its best day, is never going to be good enough to overtake Surf's Up. Number 3, I have 1970s Sunflower. A lot of people, a lot of Beach Boys fans think Sunflower is the best Beach Boys album, and I see the argument there. It is a very good album. It has some fantastic songs on it. Slip On Through is good. This Whole World is good. Add Some Music to Your Day is good. I'm just reading off the track listing. It's About Time is great. Forever is Dennis's shining glory as a songwriter. It's a beautiful song. Our Sweet Love is wonderful. It's just a great album. It's got a couple of clunkers on it. The clunkers tend to be Bruce's songs. Deirdre. Oh, Jesus. But it also has the brilliant Cool, Cool Water. And one of the reasons, I will be honest, one of the reasons why Don't Go Near the Water on Surf's Up strikes me as such a heavy-handed song is that I came to know these two albums as part of the Capitol reissue and Brother Records reissues of the old catalog when CDs became the dominant musical format. Capitol Records and Brother Records, Warner Brothers, went back and re-released all of the Beach Boys albums, but they released them in twofers. So, first CD was Surfin' USA and Surfin' Safari, I guess. Let me double check that, because if I leave that in, it's Surfin' Safari and Surfin' USA. I got them backwards. And when it gets up to this point, the twofer was Surf's Up and Sunflower. And so, or Sunflower and Surf's Up, excuse me, get it in the right order. And so you're listening to this and you hear Cool, Cool Water, and then you hear Don't Go Near the Water. And Cool, Cool Water is, it's Brian making the same argument that Al is making in Don't Go Near the Water, but Brian is doing it with a deft touch. Al is doing it with, a fish upside the face. And Don't Go Near the Water really suffers in comparison to Cool, Cool Water, because Cool, Cool Water is just, it is brilliant. Musically, it's brilliant. Lyrically, it's brilliant. It is one of their best songs. So Sunflower, fantastic song, which gets us to number 2. Now, I thought about the way I was going to rank these first two albums, and I briefly considered, just to piss people off, switching them, but yeah, I can't really do that. Number 2 is 1973's Holland. I am a huge fan of Holland. I think Holland is the epitome of the Beach Boys. It is the best Beach Boys album. Everybody's writing songs. Everybody is performing on the songs. Everybody, I don't have the credits, but I think it's produced by the Beach Boys. I don't know. It might be produced by Brian. I'll look that up. I'll put a note down at the bottom. But it is a group effort, and it is wonderful. It is my favorite Beach Boys album. It starts with Sail On Sailor, which is a Brian Wilson, Jack Riley composition. Blondie Chaplin sings it. It's gorgeous. We get Steamboat. Dennis wrote, Carl sings. It's a brilliant song. We've got the California Saga, which is good. I even like the Beaks of Eagles in the middle, which is Mike Love reciting a poem by, I should have looked that up before I started. And I'm not, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm not going to come up with it. Good stuff. And then you flip over and you listen to side 2, and side 2 kicks off with The Traitor, which is a gorgeous Carl song. Leaving This Town with Blondie Chaplin again. The song closes with Funky Pretty, which is one of Brian's weirder but better songs, and is the ultimate the best example of the later Beach Boys trend of having multiple people singing lead, where you've got one singer who does the verse and another singer who does the pre-chorus and then a third singer who does the chorus, and you just trade off as you go through. Funky Pretty's fantastic. I love that song. There is not much negative that I can say about Holland. The only thing that I would really say that is, ooh boy, I wish they hadn't done that, is the EP that came with it, Mount Vernon and Fairway, A Fairy Tale, which is just, and I don't say this lightly, it is just fucking weird. Um, Brian was weird. There were times when Brian made weird choices and did weird things just for the sake of being weird. And Mount Vernon and Fairway is one of those. You listen to it once and you think, okay, well, okay, I listened to that. And then you never listen to it again because, Jesus, why would you? It is to Holland as Revolution 9 is to the Beatles' White Album. You listen to it once and you think, okay, well, I listened to that. Check. But Holland, fantastic album. And again, I would argue it is the best Beach Boys album. And I keep saying that. It is a Beach Boys album because my number one Beach Boys album is Pet Sounds. And, of course. And Pet Sounds, okay, it's a Beach Boys album because, the Beach Boys are all singing on it. But it's not. It's a Brian Wilson album. It is I consider it Brian Wilson's first solo album. The first single to be released off of the album, I want to say, was Caroline No. And when Caroline No was released as a single, it was released as a Brian Wilson single. It wasn't a Beach Boys single. Sloop John B was released before the album was, but I don't know, first off, if Sloop John B was released before Caroline No, and I haven't bothered to look it up because, frankly, I don't care enough to look it up. And then secondly, you can also make a really good argument that Sloop John B doesn't really belong on the album. So I'm not really counting Sloop John B. Of the original songs that make up the bulk of Pet Sounds, Caroline No was the first single. And Caroline No, when it was released as a single, was released as a Brian Wilson song. And I think the whole album is a Brian Wilson solo album that the rest of the boys just sing on. And granted, they had been doing that. They had been doing, the second side of Beach Boys Today was, and frankly, probably the first side as well, was recorded by the Wrecking Crew. I mean, that's not the Beach Boys playing that. That's the Beach Boys would come in off, they'd be out touring while Brian was recording music, and then they would come in during breaks in the tour and they would sing the vocal parts, and then Brian would put it all together while they were back out on tour. But that really was the case with Pet Sounds. So it's a Beach Boys album, yes, but it's a Brian Wilson album. I would argue more than a Beach Boys album, but it is glorious. It is contender for best album recorded. I mean, if you're looking at trying to set up the top 10 albums of the rock era, Pet Sounds has got to be on that list. And for a lot of people, it is going to be in the top of that list, and for a lot of those people, it's going to be number one. For me, I don't know that I'd put it at number one, but it's up close. It is fantastic. It is a wonderful album. And you know this if you are a fan. If you are not a fan and you have not ever listened to Pet Sounds, you should listen to this album. The songwriting is wonderfully complex. The performances are wonderfully intricate. The arrangements of the songs are staggering, considering the technology of the day. That Brian was able to do this, I think, is it staggers the imagination. Pet Sounds, number 1. So, those are my rankings. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you think I'm a complete idiot? Do you think I'm a visionary seer? Whatever you think, feel free to drop a comment below. Who knows? I might actually respond to it. Stranger things, right? If you enjoyed this chat, please press the like button. If you would like to experience similar similar chats in the future, then consider subscribing. If you subscribe, go ahead and click the little bell for notifications, because why would you subscribe to something if you don't want notifications from it? Leave a comment. Tell me what you think. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you will stick around for later videos. And I hope that the rest of your day is gratifying. See you soon.